he would definitely is a high-ranking officer in the secret space program. He was framed. The murder actually happened when he wasn't even here. He was on an assignment, and specifically having come back and was having a meal with his mother when the actual, I guess, thing occurred.
If I'm ever on trial for murder, remind me not to use the excuse that I was on assignment with the secret space program.
And certainly you can't use your secret mission as a defense in a proceeding of this nature, because it violates the security oath for one thing, and for the another thing, no one would believe him.
Yeah, actually I don't believe him either. In this situation, if he didn't murder someone and he was going to trial, I'm sure if you wheeled a 5-star general into the courtroom and he said actually the guy was on assignment, that would be it. Pretty sure. I also have to wonder why a naval military man is getting prosecuted in the criminal court system rather than court-martialed. Also have to wonder if he says, you know, the reason that a 5-star general didn't walk into the courtroom and save his ass, his thing about he got framed by the secret space program. Well, in that case, how come they're in contact with him saying it's okay to disclose certain bits and bobs of information? Would they trust him that much after setting him up and sending him down for life and burying him there? It doesn't ring true, really.
They use these interdimensional gates that require them to dematerialize, and when they rematerialize on the other end, they're not the same being, and the humans can do the same thing, but that they hesitate, and most of them, like even Mark himself, will not go through certain kinds of gates that require them to dematerialize, because when they reappear on the other side, they basically have to die to show up there. They do show up in their same human form with all their memories intact, etc., but they're not the same exact being as the one who left. It's a duplicate, so to speak. And then if they come back and they cross back over, they again have to die, dematerialize, and rematerialize again in the same, configuration, which we have. But he said it's detrimental. There tends to be a degrading process that goes on in those kind of gates, and that he declined to use them as a result. He said the Greys use them, however, all the time, and that's part of the reason that their race is so devolved on certain physical levels, and he says it also affects the mental.
I love this idea of the Greys being the retards of this intergalactic multicultural setup. The hillbilly hicks who've messed themselves up with having their atoms scattered across the universe. Oh, brilliant. Okay. What she's talking about is the Star Trek style of transport, where atoms are scattered, fed into the ship's, whatever it is, atomized replicator, so they can be used for something else. The pattern of your body is made out of atoms at the other end. Though it's exactly the same memory, same person, same being, it's different in a way. But again, it's very pop culture referencey. She is saying there's interdimensional gates and other types, but it's, the first one she really describes is basically the Star Trek transporter. It's exactly the same principle. Not keen on that, but I suppose it would be one way of travelling. But would a species who could do that not realise that it was dangerous and stop doing it? Well, I suppose if we did it enough times, they'd be too stupid to know.
We talked about what is known as the Galactic Federation. We also talked about another group that's called the Collective.
What are the chances, eh? Now you might say, if there's an interplanetary alliance of some kind, what would you call it? If you're going to federate a bunch of planets and cultures, Would you call it a federation? Would that name pop up time and time again? Maybe. But the collective, I'm not so sure of. So yes, I'm looking at this thing for logical consistency and to see if there's any little snippets of pop culture, sci-fi references pop up, because they may have been subconsciously stolen. The reason that I consider this a thing is because I caught myself doing it. I do a little bit of writing, and I wrote a story this one time, had a situation where two guys were trying to get another guy to help them, and he wasn't interested until they say, so you're not interested in the princess? And then he turns around, he's like, princess? And they're like, yeah. It was a funny little snippet that basically had the guy who wouldn't help turns around because he thinks there may be money in it. He starts sniffing around then. And a couple of years after that, I was at a party where Star Wars happened to be burbling away on the telly, and did notice this one point where Luke says to Han Solo, so you're not interested in the princess? And he's like, what? And then he starts going on, Luke starts going on about the money that may be involved. Then Han gets really interested, and I realised I'd stolen it subconsciously. I didn't think there was a very high chance of coincidentally recreating exactly the same thing. I'm pretty sure that was a case of subconscious thieving. The scene was in my mind, and I recreated it with different characters because it seemed like a cool thing to do. It must have, it struck as a cool scene sometime in the past, and then I forgot about it, or at least consciously forgot about it. So I'm interested to see when, in things like this, pop culture references and things pop up. I'm looking out for them, and I've caught so many. I mean, you could say, sci-fi covers everything. There's every possible permutation. If you look at any story about proper science or the future or aliens, and then look at science fiction, there'll be a mirror version of it, simply because there are so many different sci-fi stories available to us. But there's something about that shit, it seems to be heavy on the Star Trek side, and it seems to be heavy on the Babylon 5 side. And like I say, these raptors look like the Jurassic Park raptors, which are nothing like the scientifically accepted version of raptors. And there's X-Men as well. This idea of using radiation to mutate humans has popped up, and it doesn't make sense. You'd be better off deliberately engineering. If some of these species can scatter someone's atoms and recreate them almost perfectly, what do they need random radiation mutation for? The way radiation mutates us is because it's so small, it can knock out part of the wavelength is so small, it can knock out part of your DNA structure. Most substances are not able to do that. Most substances pass through the body, they're too small to do that, or they're too big, they bounce off the body. It's a very random way of doing it. Okay, if you've got 7 billion targets, you've increased your chance for a positive mutation. But if you've completely mapped somebody's atomic structure so that you can transport them, you can take out DNA that way. You could take out and replace anything you wanted to. You wouldn't have to release radiation over the whole planet to try and get positive mutation. You could do it in a much more controlled way. All these things, the pop culture references and the logical inconsistency, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what I'm finding, unfortunately. This just seems like rambly bullshit to me.
And we talked about, as I said, the reptilians and the raptors. So it seems to be divided into those kind of groups in terms of factions that are at least the ones you can address without going into so much detail as to all the different races beyond that. And there are groups also that go interdimensionally. We didn't have time to talk about all of that, but there are many different kinds of gates here, stargates on the planet.
And stargates as well. I don't know if it's worth yawning. This is one of the things. He's the only person who makes massive alien conspiracies sound boring. You would have thought, after 7 years of being on Project Camelot and announcing these things to the world, she finds a guy who she believes is a captain of the secret space program, confirms and expands her knowledge. You'd think she'd be more excited about that. If it was me in that situation, I'd be like, I fucking told you so. I fucking told you. Here he fucking is. I'm going to dig him out of jail and wheel him round on a plinth. And we're going to expose these sons of bitches. It seems rambly, and the information seems rambly as well. She doesn't seem all that excited about it. The whole presentation seems quite off. So obviously she's going to start explaining more about the Stargates, but I think we'll leave that for part 3. It's just getting worse and worse.